Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned for my weekly reading report. It's time for my weekly reading report, which I haven't done for 2 weeks, but let's pretend it's weekly. It's time to talk about all the stuff that I read last week. Last week was terrible. Last week was not the worst week I've ever had in my life, but it was up there. Last week was pretty bad. I'm not even prepared to talk about it. It was so awful. But we survived, and everyone else did too, thankfully. So last week was bad. So I didn't get the chance to make many videos that I had hoped to last week. But I'm back now, and this week is going to be better. It's going to be better, Roger. I could sense it's good. I'm just hoping this week is better. But let's talk about what I read, because I did read some things. So let's talk about those things. And it's been a while since I've pulled out my list for the 500 book challenge, the challenge where I have to read 500 books that I own before I'll buy any new ones. And where did we leave off? I think the last book I talked about on this show was book number 234, which was The Jewel of 7 Stars by Bram Stoker. The next book that I read was book 235, which was Marvel Masterworks Fantastic Four Volume 22. I am reading every issue of the Fantastic Four from the first run of the Fantastic Four, which ran from 1962? Now I'm forgetting, to 1996. And I've been having a great time reading the Fantastic Four, especially now because I'm in the John Byrne era. And I have a bunch of Marvel Masterworks on my tablet. That I have them electronically. But no more. This is the last one that I had, apparently, for Fantastic Four. But that's okay, because I have most, if not all, of the rest of the stories in these John Byrne omnibuses. There are 2 of these, and in Marvel Epic collections. So I'm going to be moving on from this omnibus to John Byrne Omnibus 2, which I think might be missing some issues. And if it is, then I'll have to buy those issues individually, electronically, or however I can get them. But most of them are in here. And since I read all those Marvel Masterworks, the last issue of the Fantastic Four that I read was, let me get back to it. It was good. It was 256. I kind of lagged behind on my Fantastic Four reading because of circumstances. I'm hoping this week is better. But there were 4 issues where the Fantastic Four went into the negative zone, and then Annihilus, of course, slipped out of the negative zone to try to conquer the Earth and kill everybody like he always does. Every time Reed Richards goes into the negative zone, something goes horribly wrong, and yet he keeps going to the negative zone. And he just decided he wanted to take a vacation there. Hey guys, let's spend 4 issues in the negative zone for no reason at all. But let's do it for fun. And so they went and had fun, and of course Annihilus got out, and the Avengers got involved. There was an issue of the Avengers that was part of this story, which was awesome. But it was a great story, so I didn't mind so much that Annihilus tried to take over the world, as usual. And the next story I have to read is actually an issue of The Thing, because apparently that is part of what happens next in this storyline. So The Thing issue number 2, which is done by John Byrne, right? Yeah. John Byrne script and inks, and then Ron Wilson does the pencils. Which is odd, because John Byrne is not a great inker, but that's okay. So that's the next thing I have to read. So I'm having a good time. I'm having a good time with the Fantastic Four. That's something that's going right. That's going right, Roger. And the next book after that, after Marvel Masterworks, Volume 22, was book 236, which was This book, which I've already talked all about in its own video, Robert E. Howard, The Life and Times of a Texas Author by Willard M. Oliver. I'll try to remember to link that video down below if you didn't see it. This is a great book. I'll just say that. It's a fantastic biography of Robert E. Howard. If you're interested in this author, and why wouldn't you be? Because he was the best pulp writer of all time. If you're interested in this writer, pick up this book. It is a wonderful biography and one of the greatest books ever written one of the best books ever written about Robert E. Howard. So there you go. That was great. Then, book 237, which was The Moonade by Edgar Rice Burroughs, which is, this particular edition is part of the Moonade Centennial Edition. I also made a video about that last week, which you should watch if you haven't. But I am reading every book written by Edgar Rice Burroughs, more or less in the order that he wrote them. It's not exact, but more or less in the order that he wrote them. And this is the next one that I had to read, The Moonade, which is the first part of the Moonade trilogy, which is a trilogy of stories that are all very different from each other, but they all work together beautifully. Science fiction, a science fiction novel. The trilogy, the Moonade trilogy, could be Edgar Rice Burroughs' best science fiction novel. I'm not sure really in my mind whether it's better than The Land That Time Forgot, but we'll see after I complete the trilogy. And I did read this once before when I was probably around 18 or 19 years old. I might have been younger than that. That was a long time ago, man. I can't really remember. But it certainly held up when I read it this time. This is a really, really good interplanetary story. One of the stories that could fit into the sword and planet genre, which Edgar Rice Burroughs almost invented. There was some stories before Edgar Rice Burroughs that could fit into that genre. But it's terrific fun. Like I said, all of the stories in the Moonade trilogy are a little different from each other. And this story is very much in the tradition of Edgar Rice Burroughs' own A Princess of Mars, where we have some astronauts who end up inside the moon, much like the planet Earth in Edgar Rice Burroughs' universe. Inside the moon is hollow. And there's a whole world inside the moon. And the humanoids and monsters who live inside the moon have no idea that there's an outside world outside of the moon. And so our astronauts go inside the moon and have adventures. And it's actually kind of dark. It's a kind of dark story. If you didn't read the two sequels to this and you just read this, you would think, wow, this has a really dark ending, because it does. The main hero in this story, Julian, is a guy who can remember his past lives. And he can also, because he keeps reincarnating, into different relatives, like his descendants, he can remember their lives, even though it's in the future, and he can remember lives in the past. So he can remember future lives as well. And in the 1960s, which at the time this was written was in the future, in the 1960s, war has been abolished, and our hero runs into an alternate reality version of Edgar Rice Burroughs and tells him the story of one of his future incarnations. And one of them is the hero of this novel. And Julian is not, he's brave, he's strong, he's all those things, but he's not John Carter. He's not that capable. And which is pretty noticeable. He's still strong and tough and can, beat up a bunch of different bad guys. He's inside the moon, so the lesser gravity gives him super strength, basically, just like John Carter has on Mars. But yeah, he's no John Carter. Even though this story sort of follows along those lines, but very different things happen in this book. the good guys definitely do not always win in the Moonade, which was a very different thing in this book. It's very good. It's a very good story of its type. Very good adventure science fiction story. I enjoyed it a hell of a lot, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy the next couple books. I remember from the first time I read these that this was my favorite of the three, but I could see that changing now that I'm an old codger. You know, I might feel differently, but I like this one a lot. So this was The Moonade, which was book 237. I followed that with book 238, which was Doc Savage. Okay, so this is The Polar Treasure, Doc Savage, The Polar Treasure. And I am reading every adventure of Doc Savage in the order that they were originally published in magazine form in the 1930s. So as they came out as magazines, that's the order I'm reading the stories. This is a Bantam book. So the Bantam series of Doc Savage adventures, which were tremendously popular, just published them in any old order. They didn't try to stick to the original ordering at all. But oddly, this is number 4 in the Bantam series, as well as being the 4th novel released in the original publication order. So that's interesting in itself. It's a fun book. The Polar Treasure, Doc Savage. It's exactly what the title is. Doc Savage and his crew have to go and get the polar treasure, and they run into all kinds of trouble, including this exact thing, which happens in the book, where Doc Savage has to have a fist fight with a polar bear, which was awesome. It's full of violence and action and excitement and pulpy fun. It's probably just as good as the last Doc Savage book I read. It's that much fun. I was surprised reading this book because for a long time I thought, wow, this is a book where there's no period racism in it. But no, by the end of the book, there's a bunch of period racism that shows up. So I guess that's just going to happen every Doc Savage story. Who knows? But that was very much of its time. These Doc Savage novels are very much products of their time. Doc Savage, The Polar Treasure. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm going to continue to read one of these every month. And this is the one I read this month. And that's everything that I completed. That's everything I completed. That was the last book I finished. So I'm at book 238 on the challenge. I am, right at this moment, reading something else, though. Right at this moment, I'm also reading this. This is This Immortal by Roger Zelazny. This is a writer I like an awful lot. Roger Zelazny. I have one book left in his Chronicles of Amber. And then the series is over for me. And so I'm kind of putting off reading the last book in the Chronicles of Amber just because I've enjoyed that series so much. I've enjoyed everything I've read pretty much from Roger Zelazny, I think. I've never read this one, though, and this was the winner of the Hugo Award for science fiction. And if I'm remembering correctly, this shared that honor along with Dune. Dune, which is considered by many to be the greatest science fiction novel ever written. I don't think it is, although I think Dune is fantastic. But that shows you how good this was if it shared the Hugo Award with Dune. So, and it's pretty good so far. I just started it, so I haven't gotten very far. But it's pretty good so far, and I expect it to be great. I expect it to be great. I think Grammaticus, the great Grammaticus Magnus, did a review of this on his wonderful channel. Roger Zelazny is one of his favorite writers. And you can go watch that if you're interested. I will talk more about this book after I finished it. Hopefully they'll be next week if nothing goes wrong. But yeah, this is what I'm reading at the moment. This Immortal by Roger Zelazny, and it's really good so far. I will probably have time this month to read one more thing before we enter Horror Mayhem. Horror Mayhem is just around the corner. which is Horror Mayhem is one of my favorite booktube events ever. It's a wonderful thing, Horror Mayhem, where we read horror short fiction, shorter horror novels and horror short stories during the month. And yeah, I've got a lot of stuff lined up for that. And I found even more stuff that I could pick and choose from for Horror Mayhem. And I'll talk about that tomorrow, hopefully, in my next video, which should be another video in the fantastic program, Roger's Random Book Show. So hopefully that'll be tomorrow, if nothing goes wrong. Okay, guys, I will catch you next time.